Well, to discuss real estate trends in the country and much more, I have joining me live in our Lagos studio, Jamiu Ijaudola, Executive Director of Lagos Real Estate First. Good to have you on the breakfast show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Let's start off with the reality we have on ground. Majority of the houses in Nigeria in the urban centers are overpriced. Now, the notion that we have ruling is that housing or access to housing is skewed. We've not necessarily had housing models or schemes or mortgages that really have met the desired result to see affordable housing reach the average Nigerian. How do we change this notion? Really.
Thank you. I mean, it is quite sad that Nigerians are having to spend about 60% of their average disposable income on renting apartments, as opposed to 20% that was recommended by the United Nations. So, I mean, much of it has been due to lack of adequate financing, within the real estate ecosystem. So I think much of the focus should be around strengthening foreign direct investments into the property ecosystem. Because, people are trying to see how they can actually focus on getting into schemes that would help in improving access to homes. And of course, the box eventually stops at the table of the government. We should have much more strengthening public and private partnership, which would help in providing affordable housing to Nigerians.
But do you think this is an achievable feat, looking at the fact that we have Nigerians still struggling to earn minimum salary, minimum wages, so to speak? So it's quite a difficulty. You have to save for your regular household necessities, and then you still need a little bit of saving for real estate, your house, and for the future. It's quite a difficulty. Paying for school fees and a whole lot more expenditure is high.
Sadly, it boils down to the economy at large. People have to definitely struggle to make ends meet and all of those. And then I think, speaking of housing, which is definitely a basic need of every human, I think we should have much more of funding in terms of paying for much of these homes, because people with meager salaries, they definitely cannot afford to rent or purchase much of the available housing we have. So we should try and seek much more of strengthening the Federal Mortgage Bank to be much more accessible to low income earners as much as we can, which definitely has to reflect on the current reality of the economy of Nigeria.
Let's now look at the fact that over the last decade we've also seen a call for the review of the Land Use Act. How do you think this would also change the narrative we have in the real estate sector?
Definitely. Government policies have to be well reasonable, and of course have to be people driven. The Land Use Act is expected to make tremendous changes in the real estate ecosystem, and I'm sure once it comes into full use, I'm sure people can access much of these things quite easily. And again, some of this also stems from lack of motivation from the end of the people that are working in the ecosystem. And I think with the introducing of the Land Use Act, it helps to make much more accessibility for homes for people that are willing to get on them.
Well, we would like to see engagement and a review within that area, but also looking at what also makes housing a little bit of a challenge is the devaluation of the naira. Now, the naira has seen a continuous fall in terms of value, and the real estate sector is also suffering for this, because you look at the cost of construction items, from your cement to rods to tiles and other accessories you need to have a home. It's quite expensive, and the situation can only get worse according to some people, because we're not necessarily producing as much in terms of the local base of materials we need for construction.
People are having to pay through their noses to afford some of these construction materials because of the devaluation of the naira. And I think it should be much more of focusing on strengthening the naira, so that there can be much more of affordability from the end of purchasing some of these construction materials. And I think at the end of the day, it still comes back to the government. It remains much of the responsibility of the government to strengthen the naira and have it match up with the current reality of people that are trying to get homes.
And then let's also look at the manila phenomenon now. That's just been the bane of conversations for as long as so many of us can remember. Now, if you're not having your property, your land, or your building in a gated community, you're going to face a manila. And every single time you move on another stage from your lintel to having another work done, you still have to settle. How do we silence this noise, and how do we check these elements?
I mean, at the first phase, the government was elected to be people-driven. And of course, this menace has been going on for a while. It comes in intersection with government policies. This has to be phased out and, of course, looked into critically. And I think much more of engagement should continue between developers and, of course, government to try and find a common ground that eliminates these barriers that has actually plagued the building industry. So, I mean, let us have much more of government commitment as regards eliminating much of these challenges that people are facing as it relates to getting homes and building their properties.
And now we're wrapping up for the lack of time. Now, just in 30 seconds as well, let's look at your engagement as well, looking at Lagos Fest, for example. How do we also see this enlightening the average Lagosian using Lagos as a model? Well, in 30 seconds.
Basically, we would want to strengthen engagement between the government and the private sector, because at the end of the day, we would want to have affordable housing for people. And of course, engagement needs to continue between both the public and private sector stakeholders, and that is basically what we intend to achieve with the Lagos Real Estate Fest at the end of the engagement.
Well, we can only wish you the very best, and then we hope to see that some time will come where affordable housing is going to be a reality for the average Nigerian. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, Jamiu, this morning.
Thank you very much for having me.